What is going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, I wanted to showcase one of my favorite teams in the Open Master League. This is my go-to tryhard team whenever I just want to climb elo in Master League. I love using Landers, and this is basically the best Landers team I've found. If you want to see my battles live, I stream almost every day at twitch.tv/ItsAXN, where you can see live insights into my gameplay and see my teams early. If that interests you, you can click on the link in the description. But without further ado, let's get into the battles and see what this team can do. Alright, getting right on into game. Number 1, Palkia in the lead up against a Rhyperior. You'd expect this to be a fantastic matchup for our Water-type Pokemon, but Rhyperior is very spammy, and these Mud Slaps do start adding up. They have access to super effective Breaking Swipe, which can also debuff my attack stat. The debuff doesn't really matter here, but I wouldn't mind dodging it anyway to make sure our Dragon Breath still do a lot of damage. They end up, though, after debuffing me, instantly swapping out to their Zacian here. This is not the worst-case scenario. I come in with our Steel-type Pokemon, and I'm going to make a very bold bait with a Dark Pulse. I know this could be an Iron Head or a Sunsteel Strike that I'm throwing, and our opponent respects that. They end up shielding the resisted Dark Pulse and throwing a charge move here. I don't really care about switch advantage right now this game. I still have my Palkia that's very healthy. I have my Landorus with shield advantage, which is generally very strong, and my Necrozma is going to make them dump all of their energy here. I'm going to be able to actually even come in with my Landorus very quickly while they're still debuffed on their defense stat. Unfortunately, we do lose a turn here with that 1-turn delay on the swap in. They end up throwing a charge move. A Play Rough does come through, and they bring in Rhyperior here, which is actually very strange to me right now. Rhyperior is nowhere near an answer to Landorus. They're basically energy dry when they came in here too, so they need 5 full Mud Slaps to get to a Rock Wrecker. I know this is just a Breaking Swipe. I can easily no-shield this, and my Palkia is still going to be able to potentially take out that Zacian if I need it later on. They don't get the debuff this time, luckily, with Breaking Swipe. What is their final Pokemon? They bring it in. It is a Tapu Bulu, one of the trickier Pokemon for this team to see. A bit of a core breaker to our Dragon plus Ground-type duo that we have, but this is still fine. Stone Edge does a decent amount of damage, and we have to keep in mind just how much energy I still have left over on our Palkia. I want to make sure I can land the Stone Edge because this is where the biggest amount of damage that we can get into this thing is going to be. No catch comes through, so we throw the Stone Edge. This is going to put them into Aqua Tail range, and I know that their Zacian is also fairly low. I just need to make sure I have enough energy on our Palkia that we can reach the move against both this Tapu Bulu and that Zacian in the backline. They throw another charge move. They can't farm us down here, so it's going to be a Nature's Madness that comes through. Overfarm as much as we can with Palkia to have our energy for that Zacian when it comes back in. They just barely reached their move there, so I threw right before they could throw their Nature's Madness or swap out. Aqua Tail does end up getting the knockout against the Grass type. In comes the Fairy type Pokemon Zacian. Aqua Tail might not be quite enough to knock them out here, but I'm almost certain the Dragon Breath will be enough before they get to a move here. Let's see, Dragon Breath just barely taking out the Fairy type Pokemon and winning us that match. Alright, next game, a Palkia up against a Dialga, one of the worst leads we could really see, but I have 2 pretty good answers to this in the backline, so I'm going to swap out to Landorus and try our best to win this matchup. They're staying in for a second, which is actually kind of crazy to me. This Sandsear Storm is going to do massive damage. If they let this go, our Palkia can easily Dragon Breath this down later on. They end up swapping right after getting debuffed to their Yveltal. Maybe they were trying to go for a catch earlier on this game, and they didn't quite get it. But now that I got so much damage against Dialga, all I need to do is make sure that this Yveltal is going to avoid our Necrozma, and we should be in a pretty good spot. We also get a bait off there, actually, with that Sandsear Storm, and that bait also is going to let us reach this Stone Edge because that debuff is going to make it so these Sucker Punches do even less damage. We drop both shields, and we do massive damage against that Dialga with our Landorus safe swap. That's why Landorus is one of my favorite Pokemon still in the Open Master League. Despite not being as spammy as it used to be, it is still very powerful, and honestly, the Mud Slap, or Mud Shot rather, damage increase that it has is pretty helpful in some of these matchups here. In comes that first Oblivion Wing. We actually shielded one and ended up no-shielding the other. We catch an Iron Head on our Necrozma. This should be a perfect farm down range for us right now. Shadow Claws are going to do quite a bit of damage, and they shouldn't be able to reach another move here, but even if they do, it's just going to be a resisted Iron Head, so I'm going to commit to the fast move pressure and hope that energy on our Palkia and on our Necrozma should be able to win us this game. They still have a little bit of their Yveltal around, so they could bring that back in here if they want to, or they can bring in yet another very hard answer to our Necrozma. A Palkia is a little bit tricky to see, but I think I'm in a pretty good spot here. 5-turn moves are very clunky. I know that we're kind of a bulky Pokemon too, right? We're not going to get completely incinerated down before we can reach these 2 Dark Pulses, and if I can swap in the middle of an Incinerate, I can snipe down all of their energy with our Palkia here, which is exactly what we end up doing. Right now, I just have to hope that our Palkia can knock out this Ho-Oh and also knock out that Yveltal in the backline. I still have a shield, so they're going to have to try to fast move us down if they want to be able to win this game, but I already have the next Aqua Tail, and even though this doesn't knock out, I'm sure that the Dragon Breath will knock them out before we get fast moved down here, and Palkia should be able to close out this match. GG's to our opponent. Very tricky lead, but Landorus putting in a lot of work. Same with Palkia there. Next matchup, an Yveltal, this time in the lead. Very good lead, honestly, because our backline doesn't want to see this Pokemon. So good to see them stay in this matchup here, so I can whittle it down, potentially put it into range where Stone Edge could knock them out, or maybe a Sunsteel Strike. I just want to get shields down, or potentially knock this thing out if possible. They end up going for the Oblivion Wing. I have no shield, because I know I can get to 2 Aqua Tails. That was like a 10-second frame drop there. I don't even know what we just saw there. This Aqua Tail will come through. It might draw a shield, because it could have been Spatial Rend, or they might let it go, but if they let it go, I can reach the next one here very soon after. This Yveltal likely will let this move go, but if they shield, it could actually be a little bit awkward for a backline to farm this down. They do let it go, luckily. What are they going to bring in now? It is going to be a Ho-Oh, actually. That would be terrible if I give him a huge farm down here, so I have to swap out to Landorus, and this is going to be so awkward. We're down energy. I probably have to make a Sandsear Storm bait if I ever want to be able to land a Stone Edge against this later on. They're going to throw a Sacred Fire as well, so they're probably planning to stay in this matchup for the long haul right now. I'm going to go for the Sandsear Storm bait. Hopefully they don't call this. If they do, well played. That is a very hard call to make, and it is exactly what our opponent ends up doing here. I reach another Sandsear Storm right when I could get my Stone Edge, so I'm going to go for the bait once again. I kind of have to double down and hope that at least one of these baits will end up getting shielded up, and that first one did not, but the second one did end up drawing a shield from this Ho-Oh. They are at -2 attack right now. I'm going to try our best to knock this out with our Landorus. They end up actually debuffing themselves with that move. I'm going to throw another Sandsear Storm. I know at this point, if they no-shield, even though they're debuffed, this should come very close to knocking out. Doesn't quite get it there, but they end up swapping out to Necrozma at the same time as I try to snipe them down with our Palkia. That is looking very bad for us right now, but I think I can come back in with our Landorus, probably get to a Sandsear Storm, draw a shield, or do a lot of damage, potentially debuff them as well here, switch lock them in with a debuff against our own Necrozma, but they're going to get a huge farm down. This could be a little bit tricky if they have Dark Pulse on this moveset. I've seen some Necrozmas, though, run Iron Head plus Outrage. If that's the moveset, then I know I can survive the moves, but that Ho-Oh is still alive in the backline. They might be able to reach a Sacred Fire against us. They throw an Iron Head. That's going to give us a little bit of hope right now. They don't reach a second one either, which means that we're outside of range potentially of a Brave Bird knocking us out. They likely need to reach for a full-on Sacred Fire here with Ho-Oh, but unfortunately they survive on 1 HP after 3 Shadow Claws. I think this is going to be a Sacred Fire. Our opponent playing very well with their backline. Necrozma was kind of pinned there. GG's to our opponent. Alright, next game we're going to see Palkia up against a Zygarde lead. Honestly, a very tricky lead for this team to see, but you have to keep in mind it's Dragon into Dragon. Despite the fact that we're a lot less bulky, we do have a lot more efficient charge moves here with our potential Spatial Rend we can land on them, and we can also bait if we want to with an Aqua Tail. They go instantly for a charge move. I know that's not even Outrage energy. That's just going to be a crunch. We can survive that very easily, and now I'm going to just full send the Spatial Rend. If I can draw a shield or get the KO here, either way, our backline is going to be very happy to get some resources out of this Zygarde. We actually end up knocking this out. That's kind of perfect, I guess, at this point. They end up swapping into their Necrozma here, and I'm going to hard pivot to my Landorus. I know that most of the time, when they have a Necrozma in the backline, they're not going to have like a really good answer to Landorus after getting that Zygarde out of the lead, so I'm hoping maybe it's going to be like a Ho-Oh in the backline. If that's the case, then I want to one-shot it with the Stone Edge. If it's anything else, then just having energy advantage Landorus to potentially debuff could be very helpful here. Our opponent is going to try to make a catch on the Ho-Oh, but I see that a mile away. We overfarm, we reach the Stone Edge. Does our opponent want to shield at this point? They end up shielding, but that's totally fine. I can overfarm with my Landorus here, potentially get a Stone Edge into them. They don't even throw a charge move just yet. This will one-shot the Ho-Oh. This is going to be fantastic. We still have a shield. We could potentially also get to a Sandsear Storm against their Necrozma in just a second. If we do, this should knock them out. Perfect stuff. Landorus getting a, not I guess a complete sweep because that Zygarde did go down, but a backline sweep with one of my favorite Pokemon here in the Open Master League. Alright, next game, Palkia up against Palkia. Okay, I don't like this matchup. If you do have the potential to best buddy your Palkia, I would definitely recommend it. It makes this matchup a lot more consistent, at least against the non-best buddies like I'm using. I'm going to go straight for the Spatial Rend here. It looks like our opponent didn't actually go for the CMP. One way you can play out this matchup is the way I think my opponent is about to. They just shield once, they keep tapping in their screen, they get the full farm down against us. But look, they do win this matchup, but they only get one charge move off. This can either be a neutral Aqua Tail or a resisted Spatial Rend. I'm expecting a Spatial Rend, but at this point I think I'm in a pretty good spot because we have a shield advantage on our Landers, and we see that they come in with a Landers of their own. At this point, I'm kind of expecting a Mirror Team or potentially a Zacian in the back. So I'm going to catch a Sandsear Storm on our Landorus, do a bit of Shadow Claw damage to them as well. They end up throwing the Sandsear Storm. They top left, yeah, it was probably either a Mirror Team or potentially, as I was saying, a Fairy type in the backline. GG's to our opponent. Next game, a Fairy type in the lead, a very tricky lead matchup, but we can go and swap into our Landorus. We have two decent answers to this in the backline and potentially debuff them before they can throw a Play Rough against us. They haven't thrown a move just yet. I wonder if they're going to swap out after this debuff or if they're going to throw and just stay in this matchup to see how long they want to stay in. No, they end up swapping out to a Zarude, very cool Pokemon. I used this myself a couple days ago. I'm not sure if this is a perfect Zarude that our opponent has, or if they just upgraded whatever they had here. Stone Edge does end up doing almost half of their health, but this is still a little bit uncomfortable right now. I'm going to try our best to farm this down with our Palkia potentially. I could shield this up, but I know at this point they still have a ton of energy on Zacian. This could be very bad if I end up going down shields and they don't end up shielding, so I'm going to go for the full farm down here, knowing that even if I take a charge move, it's still going to be potentially having to throw a full-on close combat or Wild Charge, maybe even a Play Rough if they don't want to debuff themselves with their Zacian to knock us out. And I have so much energy. After that Zacian debuffed itself, I think an Aqua Tail is going to come very close to knocking them out, especially with extra fast food pressure here. They're going to throw a charge move. Has to be a play rough if they don't want to put themselves into Aqua Tail range, which is exactly what our opponent ends up going for. I can throw this Aqua Tail right now. This will either draw their shield or put them into range where fast moves could knock them out later on. I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail once again here, right before they reach another charge move. This will either draw the shield or get the KO against this fairy-type Pokemon. Our opponent, though, ends up shielding that attack. Very interesting play. Is it like a Kyogre in the backline? That's the only reason I could see them shielding that. I'm going to shield myself. Okay, another thing very weak to water type damage, but honestly a very tricky Pokemon to see. A Shadow Rhyperior. I think a non-Shadow Rhyperior would be very winnable right now, but the Shadow does have quite a bit more damage. It still gets one-shot by the Sunsteel Strike, but I think this is looking very bad if this is going to be a Rock Wrecker. I'm not sure we can survive this plus the fast move pressure. Despite being resisted, almost one-shots us here. We go for the Sunsteel Strike at the last second. This is going to be a race, a fast move farm down race, and I'm going to be able to farm down their Zacian before they can quick attack me down. 1, 2, 3, it's a simul KO, a tie here. I'll take it. Very tricky matchup, barely coming back, and at least drawing the matchup there to a tie. GG's to our opponent. Next game, we're going to see another mirror matchup, but they do have the best buddy on their Palkia. One thing I like to do when I know I'm going to lose CMP is sometimes potentially try to catch a move here. Looks like we were able to get it. A Spatial Rend still does a massive amount of damage, though, if they end up throwing it. Yeah, it does a decent chunk, but look, in the backline, there's going to be a Ho-Oh, so despite them getting a lot of damage into us, I'm going to find giving them less farm, but they're still going to get a full 5 Incinerates here, which is going to be a lot of energy, but this Sunsteel Strike will put them into range, where I think an Aqua Tail from our Palkia that we were able to store from that catch will be able to knock them out here. Aqua Tail going to either draw a shield or KO this Ho-Oh. They end up letting it go. Fantastic. That's 100 energy down the drain I don't have to deal with. They come back in Palkia. I get a full farm down. I'm going to swap instantly to our Landorus. I don't know if I want to throw that Aqua Tail or not. I just want to come into this matchup. And since I know I'm down a turn here, I'm going to throw the Sandsear Storm. They are switch locked in this matchup. Now they are going to be permanently debuffed. Maybe I should at least baited the Stone Edge here, but I mean, at this point, I know we're going to win this game. We have an Aqua Tail loaded in the backline. All I have to do from this point on is shield properly at least one of the Stone Edges, and then go for Stone Edges of my own. Now, they have to shield this if they don't want to get knocked out or potentially put into Sandsear Storm range. What is my opponent going to do? Obviously, they are forced to shield this, and I still have that Aqua Tail once again loaded in the backline. I just have to draw shields from this, get them as low as possible. I no-shield this because I know if it's a Sandsear Storm bait, then I don't want to shield it, and that would make it so my next Stone Edge would not be lethal. But if it's a Stone Edge, that's fine. I still survive it. We can reach the Stone Edge, and since we are not debuffed, this will draw the shield from them. They end up shielding, and now I know if I can land another Stone Edge, we are going to put them easily into range where I can KO with an Aqua Tail. I'm also the best buddy Landorus for myself here. I know they are not best buddies, so no matter what, I always win the CMP, and that looks like that's exactly what it was. They did bait me with a Sandsear Storm here, so this won't knock out, but I don't even care at this point. My Palkia is still well within the range where I can reach that Aqua Tail. We're at 1 HP on Palkia, so it's not, that healthy, but as long as the game lets us throw this Aqua Tail here, we can KO this Landorus with the energy that we had stored in the backline. Palkia able to get a KO on the Ho-Oh, on the Landorus, and the Palkia. A full-on Palkia sweep that game. GG's to our opponent. All right, next matchup, Necrozma up against our Palkia. A little bit of a tricky lead matchup here, depending on their moveset. I know they can end up going for an Outrage and one-shotting us, but maybe they're running the standard Sunsteel Strike, that is, and Dark Pulse like I am, or maybe they're running Iron Head and Outrage. If that's the moveset they're running, I really have to respect a one-shot, but I'm going to no-shield, just hope for the best right now. Thankfully, just a Dark Pulse coming through. In comes a Palkia, and this is looking a little bit awkward. I know I was saying this was a very neutral matchup, but they have a big energy lead with their Palkia here, and even though I do have my Necrozma to answer this, this is not the hardest answers as we were seeing in that lead matchup, right? We see that the Aqua Tail does a lot of damage here. I'm not sure if I were to shield the next one, if I could farm them all the way down, or like reach my next Dark Pulse rather, before they would farm us down. So this is looking very awkward. I have another Dark Pulse loaded. I'm going to shield to guarantee that I can at least land that, but I think I might be in range where they can farm us all the way down before we're going to be able to reach that third Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse either is going to draw a shield or do a massive amount of damage to this Palkia here. Opponent opts to shield that move. I'm going to try to reach a move with Palkia. Very bad play, because I don't even reach the Aqua Tail here. That's looking very bad now. I can come in Landorus. I can come in with our Necrozma as well. It's kind of a tough call, right? Because either they can swap out with one way or another here. I at least want to get some sort of an energy lead with our Landorus. Maybe there's a chance we're going to have to play with this Pokemon later on, but maybe they just have like 2 water types in the back line or something else that could hard counter Landers, or maybe they just get to another move before we can even get the mud shot down here, which is going to be absolutely catastrophic. This is unwinding very quickly. Our opponent actually does have a Kyogre in the back line, so honestly that Aqua Tail doesn't really matter, but I think I probably played that one pretty poorly there. End up losing that game. Our next matchup, Ho-Oh up against Palkia. Basically the best lead I could ever ask for, but it honestly, I say that, it's not actually as good of a lead as you might expect. These Brave Birds, which honestly a lot of the time they do end up throwing a Brave Bird before swapping out, it does a massive amount of damage, puts us into the red health, and in comes an Yveltal, a very tricky Pokemon to see. I'm going to bait a Spatial Red, hopefully draw a shield, and do enough fast pressure to them here that maybe I can put them close to Stone Edge range. At the very least, we're avoiding 2 very bad matchups for our Necrozma right now. There's a Ho-Oh in the lead, there's this Yveltal right here, 2 Pokemon that are basically just like the worst case scenario for Necrozma, right? So if I can neutralize them now, then Necrozma should have a decent time later on. Stone Edge won't quite one-shot here, but our opponent, they end up shielding. That is a very good shield call by them. If I went for a bait, I would be so happy because I'd outpace them to the next Stone Edge, but unfortunately we did not risk it this time. End up shielding up this next move so I can land this Stone Edge against the Flying-type Pokemon here. I don't think it's going to be quite enough to knock them out, but it should be close, at least at this point, to putting them into farm down range. If I can Mudshot down, that would be fantastic. Oh man, I had to throw the move at the last second there. I didn't know if I could quite get it. 1 HP survive on the Yveltal. I don't want to simul KO. I want to guarantee switch so I can get my Palkia back against that Ho-Oh later on, and potentially my Necrozma can be against whatever the final Pokemon is going to be. Turns out the final Pokemon is a Tapu Bulu. Good thing I have switch advantage here. Tapu Bulu absolutely loves to see this. We can one-shot this thing probably 2 or 3 times over with a Sunsteel Strike. So at this point, I just need to watch if they ever swap out to that Ho-Oh here. I'm actually pretty happy they're giving us a bit of energy though, because by giving me this energy, I can potentially throw a Dark Pulse against this Ho-Oh later on if I can't quite deal with this with our Palkia, but I know we can reach a move after 3 Incinerates. If I can reach a Spatial Rend, I know this is going to do more damage than the Aqua Tail, and this will end up knocking out the Ho-Oh. Back comes in that Tapu Bulu, but the thing is, we have a full-on Sunsteel Strike loaded on our Necrozma. We have enough attack to win CMP if they would have gone for it, but they end up overfarming anyway. They know at this point this one-shot is coming. We can take out the Tapu Bulu with our Steel-type Pokemon and win the game there. All right, next matchup, we're going to see Enamorus lead. Okay, that's a bit tricky. Honestly, very jealous of Enamorus. This is a very cool Pokemon to have. My mom, actually, fun fact, she has a perfect Enamorus. No XLs for it, but I wish I had one of those so I could at least start working on it. Fly ends up doing a decent amount of damage, but I know that most of the time, Enamorus is going to be running Fly and Grass Knot, so they're never going to one-shot us. And look at how squishy this Pokemon is. My Dragon Breaths, which are resisted, are actually doing a sizable chunk of damage here. I try to swap out, but the game, a little bit stuttery here, does not let us, which is very bad. I could have stored some energy, potentially some health on our Palkia as well to get to another move against that Enamorus later on, but I know at this point I have to come in with my my Necrozma here, because if I don't, they're going to be able to probably have a hard counter to me in the backline. I'm going to go for the Sunsteel Strike. I know it does a little bit more raw damage, and I likely will not reach a second charge move before the Palkia reaches another Aqua Tail. That does a lot of damage, but as I was thinking, they reach that Aqua Tail now. I'm going to try to get a nice Mudshot down with our Landorus. Potentially, we can get a Stone Edge against that Enamorus later on. We'll have to see what our opponent is going to bring in and what their final Pokemon is going to be this game. Opponent waiting down the switch clock. What is in the back? Another flying type Pokemon. 2 very strong answers to our Landers. I have to go for the Hail Mary play. Try to land a Stone Edge right now. Maybe if I can land this, I can win the game. But no, they end up surely. I know they'd survive another one anyway. So at this point, they kind of have me just with fast food pressure with their flying type Pokemon. All right, next matchup, another Necrozma versus Palkia matchup. Very neutral lead. I'm going to try our best to play this out a little bit better than I did last time, though. Maybe overfarm, have energy for the backline in case I need it. They do end up throwing a move after potentially an outrage worth of energy, so I will shield it up just in case. They go for a Dark Pulse bait, though, which likely means that they are running Dark Pulse and Sunsteel Strike rather than Dark Pulse Outrage. Normally it's going to be Iron Head Outrage or Dark Pulse plus Sunsteel Strike, so at least that's the call that I'm making right now. Right before they get their next charge move, though, I do want to throw my Aqua Tail to potentially either draw a shield or knock out this Necrozma, make them make a decision before I have to double shield my my Palkia here. Unfortunately, it does look like, though, they will be able to survive the Dragon Breath before I can farm them all the way down, but I can still outpace them to this Aqua Tail, potentially draw that final shield, or get a KO against this Pokemon. In comes the Aqua Tail. What is my opponent going to do? They end up giving me Switch, but they take shield advantage here, and this is looking a little bit tricky. They have an Yveltal in the backline, which is very good against me, especially up energy, but the thing is, I could also potentially go into my Landers right now. I have to swap out. If I don't, they just outpace my Landers to a Stone Edge anyway, so I just have to hope that I can hard pivot my Landers and have a lot of play in the backline. My opponent, though, making a fantastic read here. They realized that they were probably going to be able to get a very safe catch after 7 sucker punches there. They come in with an Ice Fang Zamazenta, and this is looking absolutely terrible right now. But I do see a way to maybe win this game, right? I'm undercharging the Sandsteel Storm, so I can get a huge Shadow Claw down with my Necrozma. If I have the perfect amount of energy coming out of this matchup, I know I can go for the Sunsteel Strike against that Yveltal, potentially win this game. We got the attack drop luckily as well, which means that that crunch does almost nothing to us. Ice Fang's doing nothing to us as well. We make a catch here on our Palkia, and now we just have to hope that we can make the right call. Watch the corner, see if they swap out to the Yveltal. If they do, which they do, throw the Sunsteel Strike immediately. If I went for a Shadow Claw here, they could have sniped me down with that Dark Pulse, but seeing what was going to come in, calling the swap on that Yveltal lets me snipe them down with that Sunsteel Strike and win the game there. GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, another Necrozma in the lead. A very awkward Pokemon, honestly, through and through for our entire team to deal with. It's obviously the best matchup for us against our Landorus, but if they have this in the lead, I would have to assume there's going to be Landorus answers in the backline, which is why I don't like this matchup as much. They end up building up to 8 once again, which could be an outrage. They throw the Iron Head, which kind of is a big tell that they're running the classic moveset with outrage. I see a Palkia swap in right after that as well, which means I have a lot of energy. I'm going to try to make a risky bait, go for the Aqua Tail into Spatial Rend play, get either both shields or at this point one-shot them. Let's see what they want to do. Spatial Rend does end up getting shielded here, and now I get to come in with my Necrozma, potentially sponge as much energy as possible, and see what they want to do. The tricky part, though, is I don't actually have Outrage, so I don't think any of my charge moves at this point will knock out, but as I was saying earlier, if I can only throw one charge move, my Sunsteel Strike does do more raw damage, so that is the move I'm going to throw, and if they want to swap and catch on anything, they might catch a Sunsteel Strike, and that is also exactly what happens. They swap, they catch a Sunsteel Strike, probably hoping for a Dark Pulse against their Yveltal here. That is fantastic. Look at all the damage I just got off. Basically putting them into Dragon Breath farm down range, which is going to be huge. But honestly, despite how good this game's looking right now, they still have their Palkia alive, which could be very awkward if they get to 2 charge moves here. And they still also have that Necrozma with a decent amount of energy on it. I have energy on my Palkia. I have a lot of health on my Landorus, but I can't overfarm enough here to get to 2 moves. I have to make sure that they don't get to another Aqua Tail, and I have to hope that they can't reach an Outrage on that Necrozma before I can reach this next charge move on my Landorus. If they can reach a charge move and it's only an Iron Head, I know I survived this move, but if this is an Outrage, I get one shot. What move do they end up throwing here? It's going to be the Iron Head. We survive 1 HP. Landorus able to come in clutch, getting another endgame sweep here. Sandsteel Storm coming through, one-shotting the remaining health on this Necrozma and winning us that match. GG's to our opponents today. As I was saying at the start of this video, this is my go-to team whenever I just want to have a decent time trying to climb using a meta team with a lot of very strong Pokemon. Landorus is basically my favorite Pokemon, I think, in the Open Master League right now. People think it's got nerfed. It is still so strong, especially as a safe swap, as long as you're not getting a ton of Kyogres, potentially Waterfall Primarinas. It is such a powerful Pokemon. Well, thank you so much for watching today's video. I share my battles basically every day live at twitch.tv/ItsAXN, so if you want live insights to my battles or potentially seeing my teams early, please make sure to check me out there. Once again, that link is in the description. Also, I'm going to upload a lot more to the channel, so if you want to see more videos like this, please make sure to subscribe. Thank you again for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.